Hello everyone, I'm Laura Buchler from Inkyfingers Papercrafting, a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Nanaimo, BC, Canada. I'm here to show you how to make the Magic Slider card. This is a card that I originally made for a Stampin' Diversity swap at Backstage this year in Las Vegas, and I was thrilled when Stephanie asked me if I would present it to you all for World Card Making Day. Let's get started. Here are some of the supplies you're going to need to make this card. All of the measurements and details will also be in the PDF for you. This card is to recognize depression. The first version that I made for the swap at Backstage used the Countryside Inn Designer Series paper. Nothing better to show depression than a card made entirely of blue paper. I've run out of this paper now though, so I'm going to be using a different paper from the Winter Meadow Suite to make this card. I'm going to start by removing my blade from the trimmer because I don't want to accidentally cut the paper instead of scoring it. I'm going to score at 4 inches and again at 8 inches. Once I've done that, I'm going to use my blade to cut off 1/8 of an inch from one end of the DSP. This is just going to make the trifold a little bit easier. Use your bone folder to burnish the folds that you've created. Next, you're going to want to use a die. Here, I use the Deckled Rectangles die to cut a window in the middle panel of your DSP. You could use any shape you like. Set aside the shape you cut out. You're going to use it later. Next, we're going to take our larger piece of white cardstock and score at 3/8 of an inch along the long side. This creates a very narrow tab. Our next step is to attach this white piece of cardstock to our card base. I'm going to apply tear and tape along that narrow little tab and attach it to the base. I was told a long time ago that using a bone folder on your tear and tape before you remove the backing warms up the adhesive and makes it work better. I don't know if it's true, but I always do it anyway. Can't hurt, might help. I love using the pokey end of the Take Your Pick tool to remove that backing. Lay down your white cardstock so that the score line on your cardstock matches the score line on the DSP. Fold in the DSP and that little tab is going to stick to that DSP you folded down. This white cardstock doesn't look too exciting now, but it's a major part of the magic to. Next, it's time for stamping. And yes, I do recommend using a Stamparatus or another stamp positioning tool to line up your stamps perfectly. Right now, I'm playing with where I want the stamps to be and using that DSP rectangle I cut out to make sure that everything's going to fit in the window I cut out. Once you have your stamps where you want them, pick them up with the plate of the Stamparatus and get ready to ink them up. You're going to be stamping on 2 pieces, the window sheet and the white cardstock, both of which are the same size. I've made a little mark on my grid paper so that I can tell how to line the paper and the window sheet up in the same place both times that I stamp. Because you're stamping on window sheet, you'll need to use StazOn ink. I'm lining up my white cardstock in the exact same place, using the marks I made on the grid paper to help me. Notice that I've also used the magnet to hold the cardstock in place. When you're ready to clean your stamps, make sure you use Stays-On Cleaner. Now it's time to color. I love using my blends to color. They make me feel like an artist, even though I'm definitely not. I'm always happy with the creations I color with my blends. You could also use your watercolor pencils, your pastels, your markers, any other coloring tool that you prefer. I'm not a coloring expert, so I'm not going to give you any tips, and I've sped up the video here to make it go by faster. But what I wanted to tell you about was what inspired me to make this card. In the spring of 2023, I was diagnosed with depression, and it turns out it's something that has been with me for decades of my life, if not my entire life. It's something that I'm still trying to figure out how to deal with. The particular way that my depression manifests isn't by making me stay in bed all day, crying and feeling helpless, which is what I thought depression looked like. It's more like there's an emptiness inside, a blankness, a dullness, a disinterest, a lack of color. Let me say right now that I'm getting help for my depression, I'm getting treatment, I've found an excellent therapist, and I have lots to look forward to, not to mention tons of support from family and friends. I've also learned that it's not my imagination. Crafting really does improve my mental health. But when I decided to participate in the Stampin' Diversity Swap, depression and mental health was a topic I definitely wanted to touch on. Making a slider card seemed absolutely natural, given my feelings about how color goes out of the world when I'm feeling depressed. Feeling like I can't connect to the joy and enthusiasm that I usually have for my life. It's estimated that about 18.5% of adults in North America have depression. So it's definitely not unusual. Chances are you know somebody who's dealing with it, or maybe you are yourself. If that's true, I want you to make sure that you reach out for help. Even when depression lies to you, know that you are important, you are worthy, you are loved, people care about you, and we want you to stick around. Reach out to your doctor, your partner, a trusted friend, or even just Google depression help near me. You are worth it, and you can feel better. Just like it says on the card, you're in my thoughts, and I wish you all the best. Now that the coloring is done, some magic is about to occur. Hold your window sheet over your cardstock and line up the stamped images exactly. Use the binder clip to hold the pieces together. Use a small circle punch to punch a circle of cardstock. Pinch it in half and then use your bone folder to burnish that fold. You're going to use some multi-purpose glue and turn this into the tab at the top of your slider. Once the glue has dried, you can remove the binder clip. This piece of contrasting cardstock measures 2 inches by 4 inches. I'm going to score it in the center at 1 inch, give it a pinch, and then use this scallop die from Scalloped Contours die set to cut through it. Notice I'm not cutting on the folded end, I'm cutting on the open end. Now I've got a double-sided scalloped edge that I can use to cover the end of my card. Similarly, I've got white pieces, one with the scalloped contoured edge and one without. This is where the magic of that white cardstock is going to come into play. We've got our magic slider, the acetate sheet, and the stamped white cardstock. We're going to put our non-stamped white cardstock right in between as a divider. That way, when you pull the slider, you'll be able to see the color appear. Now we need a way to prevent our slider from being pulled all the way out of the card. That's where we're going to use these white pieces. These white pieces are just a shade wider than our slider. I want to attach the plain one at the back of the card and then the scalloped one at the front. I'm just going to use some tear and tape at the very bottom and line it up with the bottom of the slider. You'll want to make sure that it hangs over on each side. Same thing on the front. Our scalloped edge is going to hang over the side at the bottom of the acetate sheet. Notice we can still pull apart the window sheet and the cardstock. Once again, I put those on the white cardstock that's attached to the card base. Everything can still slide freely. Now watch, I'm going to mark with a pencil where we want our little stoppers to go. Your stoppers can be made out of dimensionals, mini dimensionals, or foam strips. You're just going to put them on those 2 tiny little X's. I like to use the little edge pieces that are left over once you've used all the dimensionals in the middle. And I like to cut them so that they have a straight edge. And by the way, you don't even have to take the backing off. They will do their job even with the backing still on. Now that wider strip of cardstock that we put at the bottom is going to bump into that dimensional piece and prevent the slider from pulling all the way out of the card. Now I'm finally ready to seal up my card. I'm going to use tear and tape to put these 2 sides together. I'll use my pencil to make a little marking on the DSP to line up with where that circle tab is. Now I'm going to punch out a half circle what I like to call the thumb hole to line up perfectly to show people where you're meant to pull the slider. Just one more step to go. Stick with me. See how the bottom of the card is kind of open and it looks unfinished? That's where this folded scallop piece is going to come in. I'm going to use my multi-purpose glue and glue this onto the bottom just to make it look a little bit more finished. And there's our finished slider. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you have a wonderful World Card Making Day. Thanks for watching, everyone, and happy stampin'! Bye!